friends, old and new, welcome to Stupid Little Games, the podcast where we talk about all things gaming from the inside out. Each week, I sit down with a guest from various parts of the gaming industry, and we chat about our current gaming obsessions, we tell stories from projects past or present, and then we'll play a stupid little game that I've written specifically for each guest. I'm Jess, by the way, so thank you so much for coming back and listening. Speaking of guests, today we are chatting with a former producer and studio manager at Sony and Avalanche Studios, respectively. Currently, you can find her as the chief operating officer at Radical Forge. It's a game studio in Middlesbrough. She's the co-chair of the Liverpool GameChangers, which we're definitely going to chat about and get into. Seriously, if you want to hear about how to build community with your game studio and other game studios in your area, then just keep listening because we're going to talk a bit about that. So she's also one of the kindest and most poised people that I've ever really come across. So please welcome the fucking rad Alison Lacy.
Oh, wow. I'm blushing. That's a lovely intro. Thank you, Jess. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. I told you I was going to say some nice things about you. So you should have
Yeah, I'm glad
expected
I gave you those $20 for a good reason.
Yeah, I asked your mom to tell me some good things about you. And then, no, I'm kidding. Yeah, but thank you so much for being here. And also Happy New Year.
Oh, and to you too. Yes, happy 2025. Let's hope for the best.
Yeah, it's this is the first recording that I've done in 2025, and I'm just hoping that the year doesn't kill us.
Yeah.
But
I feel you.
we will get through it together. And yeah, so like I said before, Allie is in the UK, so I really appreciate you taking the time in the different time zones, because time zones is hard. So I'm sitting here in the morning with some tea, and Allie's hanging out with some wine in the afternoon.
Absolutely.
So it works. It works. I think it works really well. So yeah. So before we get into anything else, let's talk about our current obsessions. So Allie, what are you playing right now, and why should we also maybe play it?
Well, I am playing Monument Valley 3.
Oh, cool. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so a mobile game available, I guess, globally, certainly in the UK on Netflix Games.
Oh, Netflix games. We were talking about that. I was talking
Yeah,
about that with Hamish, the VGA episode, Video Game Awards episode.
yeah, yeah. So I absolutely love this game, and I've loved it. This is obviously the third in the series, by a fantastic studio that's in London. And they make this beautifully immersive game that is really what I need right now. As we were
Nice.
talking about the times in which we're living, it's a very gentle puzzle game
Oh,
that
cool.
uses I guess geometry.
Oh,
You have to find your way around these little spaces, but it's very straightforward. It's very pure and simple in what it's trying to do, and it does it really effectively. And I think if you are a fan of audio design,
oh.
this is a really good reason
I'm
to play
perking
this
up
game.
even more because I'm
Hmm.
I'm an aspiring audio nerd when it comes to video games because I find it all fascinating. So what is it about the audio that you like so much?
It's so well done. So it's like the whole vibe of the game is very immersive and gentle. So it and it's very straightforward. So you're this little character that's walking around in a space. And as you interact with things, there are really beautifully, elegantly delivered audio feedback in what you're
Oh.
doing. It's really, I'm really taken with it. And yeah, so us two games, shout out to them, amazing company,
Did you play the
great
first two?
team. Yeah, yeah. So play it if you just want to chill out.
Did you play the first two Monument Valleys?
Yes, yes.
I mean,
Yeah. So it's a very coherent little storyline, and the
oh.
evolution is really nice. So yeah.
I mean, it must be pretty popular if they've made three of them.
Yeah, I think so. They've won all kinds of awards,
Oh, wow.
for especially for the original game, the first one.
Very cool. When
Yeah.
did it come out, the third one?
Oh, well, Monument Valley 3 came out just before Christmas, like I think it was about a month or 6 weeks before Christmas, and I saved it up because I wanted to play it during my Christmas break.
Oh, so it's like new.
Um,
It just came out like just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, the third one just came out, but I think the first one, I can't remember now. It was a few years ago now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, good for
yeah.
them. Cool. Yeah, that sounds like right up my alley, especially
Mhm.
gentle puzzle games that you could kind of disassociate to.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it really immerses you. And I think the audio and obviously the artwork is lovely as well. Everything works in it, but the audio really helps you with that immersion.
Yeah.
You
And
have to wear headphones.
you say like it's mobile games, so I feel like this could be great for any sort of commute that's happening.
Hmm.
I'm always looking for new things to play on my commute. And because I mean, here in New York City, I could be on a train for 10 minutes or I could be on the train for 45 minutes. Some days you just don't know. So having do you need to be connected to the internet to play it?
No,
Oh, cool. Okay.
no, no, no. It downloads onto your phone. Yeah. And
That's
then therefore you can save it and, go back and replay levels and things like that. Yeah.
oh, that's
Really nice.
awesome. Cool. I am so my current obsession right now is well, I'll just say I just finished Veilguard. So I'm very excited about finishing Dragon Age. It was wonderful. I laughed, I cried. I've talked about Veilguard here on the podcast before. I thought it was beautiful. The ending was
Mhm.
really satisfying. So I finished Veilguard. And then basically, as soon as I finished Veilguard, I started playing Infinity Nikki. Which is also mobile, like for me, mobile, because I don't, you can either have on mobile or it's on Steam or PlayStation. I don't have a PlayStation. So I play it on my iPad and it's kind of optimized for mobile because most of the other Nikki games, which apparently there's like, this is the fifth Nikki game, and this is the one that's like blown up. I play it on the iPad with my Xbox controller, which is so
Oh,
it's basically just like a little mobile like game setup that I just kind of take all over the house. It's great. Have you heard of Infinity Nikki?
no, I haven't. I
Okay.
need to check it out.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So it's a free to play game and I think there's a lot of stigma around free to play games um as cash grabs and kind of throwaway sort of things. And this one isn't. And I think that's why it's so popular. It came out, I want to say just about a month ago. So it hasn't been out for very long. It's the fifth installment of the Nikki games. It started with like Nikki Up to You. There was two of those, and then there was Love Nikki and then Shining Nikki. I've never played any of those. I didn't even know about any of those. And then I started seeing so many people talking about Infinity Nikki, especially on Blue Sky, which is like my social media of choice these days. And the reason I started playing it is because there were a bunch of folks talking about Infinity Nikki that were not the demographic for Infinity Nikki. Because Infinity Nikki is at its heart, a dress up game where you play Nikki, who is a beautiful, like 19, 20-year-old girl, and you're going around finding new outfits. The outfits are so gorgeous and it's very like anime style. And it's not the type of game that I would be drawn to. No, Infinity Nikki is not a dress up game. And so I've and not that dress up games and like the games like specifically dress up games are bad like at all. It's just not what I'm super into. And so I was like, let me try this. So I downloaded Infinity Nikki and just from the beginning there's so much to do. Like yes, it's about like clothes. So basically you get these clothes and the clothes have different abilities and like the magicians in this world are called stylists. It's really ridiculous. So it's like the stylist guild and I before playing it, I thought it was like have you heard of like Roblox Dress to Impress?
Yes, yeah.
So I thought it was like Roblox Dress to Impress but in Unreal and just
Okay.
like a better looking Dress to Impress. It's not. So there's a full story and the story is still being like it's not finished yet. Like they're going to be adding more parts to it. But it is so much fun. It's really subversive. So the
Oh,
writing there's like parts where it's like class issues, class struggles. They talk about depression. They talk about like moving on from the deaths of family members. And
oh,
yeah, it's really and the whole world is like run on wishes. It's very weird. And there was this one point that I even took a screenshot of it because there's this little race of creatures called like the PCs, and they're made from the wishes of people that have been discarded. That's not really important, but the important part is you are you are talking to them, and one of them is being mistreated. And you ask them, like, why don't they call the volunteer corps if they're being so mistreated? And the volunteer corps are like the cops of this little area. And the woman says, well, some of the people mistreating her are on the volunteer corps. So how are they supposed to stop it when they're the ones doing it? And I was like,
Mm.
Infinity Nikki said
Yeah.
ACAB. Like,
Exactly. Wow.
and this is a game about fashion.
Yes, but I love games that do this though.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's so fun, and there's so many little mini games, and there's like so many things to do, and you have this little cat companion named Momo, and
Oh.
I was like,
Oh, now I'm
okay,
sold.
yeah, one hundred
No, now
percent.
I'm definitely doing it.
100%. So it is a gacha system, like a lot of the things, and I also love a gacha system because it tickles the part of my brain that is likes to gamble, but it's really fun, and it's blowing up right now, so I don't think I need to promote it at all because
Mhm.
I think that people are playing Infinity Nikki, and I'm sure they are making so much money. But one good thing is, like, you don't have to spend money to advance. You
Okay.
can spend money and you can get more outfits and things like that, but if you just grind away, then
Mhm.
you can get this stuff. One drawback though, there's like 10 different currencies in the game. And I
Mm.
probably have like 40 to 50 hours in this game, and I still don't understand all of the currencies and all of the level up things. I really don't. I have to keep looking up like what to do. But it's fun. So if you and it's mobile. So it's made to be mobile. You can play it on the phone. I play it on my iPad, so it'll be a little bit bigger because my eyes are terrible. But yeah, Infinity Nikki, I stayed up until like 4 o'clock in the morning the other night just playing Infinity Nikki. And it's yeah. So sorry, it's I'm gonna be talking about Infinity Nikki probably for the next like month or so on this podcast, but it is fun and I highly recommend.
Sounds good. And we'll check it out.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to mention because all it takes is one person asking me a question on Blue Sky. Um, I don't get any sort of money for promoting any of the games that we talk about on Current Obsession.
Yet.
Yeah. Well, this podcast is not important enough yet that people are reaching out to me to play their game and talk about it on the podcast. But somebody was like, "Do you all of these games you're promoting on your Current Obsessions? Do you get kickback from that?" And I'm like, "No."
Not yet.
Well, I don't think I would want to, so that I could give like
Yeah.
actual
Yeah.
like I'm playing this and this is great, or I if somebody was giving me money, I would feel bad saying like this was terrible.
Yeah, no, fair. Well, you wouldn't be able to, would you? I mean, that's
No.
the thing, like, because the other thing I'm playing is a Radical Forge game that we haven't released yet. Um,
Mm.
and it's out there. It's called Southfield, and you can see it on Steam. It's not. It will release it in early access
Oh, cool.
at some point to be announced. But yeah, and I sort of thought, well, I shouldn't talk about that because that just sounds like I'm promoting our game, but I
Yeah, but you
will
work for them, so it's
possibly.
okay. That I mean, you can talk about Southfield. It is a game that you're playing, and if you want people, do you want people to like wish list it,
Oh,
or
that would
can
be
they, or
amazing.
can people
Yeah.
already play like a demo?
No, they can wish list it right now, and they can see there's if you go to the Steam page, you can see loads of video of it and stuff like that. But
Wh-
yeah, it's a really quirky physics-based farming
Ooh,
sim type
farming
game, but you're
sim.
in a very weird world with all sorts of things going on. Yeah, and it plays around with the idea of that kind of cozy farming, kind of creating things feel, but with a physics that is really silly.
Oh, I like silly.
So you really it makes me laugh, and yeah, so it's pretty cool. So check it out, is what I would say.
Southfield.
Watch this space, Southfield. Yeah.
Southfield on Steam. Is it going to be a Steam release, or will there be like console releases as well?
Yes, there will be, but all of these things will be talked
in
about in more
in the
detail
future.
this year.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I mean the folks that listen to this podcast, a lot of folks are in the gaming industry, so they know that like you can say some things, but you can't say other things. So it's
Well,
completely
don't say all the
understandable.
things. Yeah.
Cool, but yeah, check out Southfield and Wishlisted. I'm not getting paid by Radical
Wishlisted.
Forge, but I don't mind saying that because we want to promote the things that we're working on. So that's awesome. Rad. Okay, well, I think that is a perfect time to stop for a quick ad break. We'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by Brooklyn indie rock band Social Robot. Their sophomore album outreach program brings tape deck 80s synthwave vibes as vocalist Bayard Russell sweetly skewers the attention economy and data overload, or so says Nagamag magazine. I like the term attention economy and data overload. And by the way, so if you've heard the theme music to this podcast, you've already heard Social Robot, and I love my theme song. So go to socialrobotmusic.com or search for Social Robot on Apple, Spotify, Napster, LimeWire, or wherever you pirate your favorite music. And let's get back to the show. And we are back. Allie, getting to the chat portion, before we get into your awesome work, I wanted to just say thanks for taking me around in Liverpool. I made Allie, who has worked in Liverpool for a very long time, take me to Beatles things. And I don't know if you know anyone from Liverpool, but I can only imagine the amount of like eye rolling at all of the tourists going around to all the Beatles spots. But I was like, I came to Liverpool this past summer. I was doing like a tour of like Guildford, and I was like, I can't go to the UK without going up to Liverpool to see the folks there. So I made Allie take me to a bunch of Beatles spots, but she was very gracious about it, and we had a good time.
We had a great time. And that's the thing, when you live somewhere or, work somewhere, you don't do any of the tourist stuff yourself because,
True,
you
I
don't
get
have the
that.
time, you don't think about it. So you gave me a great excuse, and we went to the Beatles story because there are actually two Beatles museums in Liverpool, for those of you that care. And we decided to go to the one that was really full of like all of these sort of artifacts and
Yeah.
merchandise from the time that was sort of put together by friends and people they'd worked with over the years. And it was quite it was like this old building that wasn't exactly in the best condition, was it? But it was full of heart and soul.
Which was really apropos. Like I thought it
Yeah.
was great, and each level was a different like era of the
Uh-huh.
Beatles short lifespan. If you really think about it, they were only together
Hmm.
for a certain number of years. But I went through my Beatles phase in college, like most people do. They have a Beatles phase at some point where I became like obsessed with the Beatles and reading all of the biographies and all of that. And then I kind of got out of that, but I was like, I'm going to Liverpool. Allie, can we please go see some Beatles things? And Allie was like, okay. No,
Yeah.
you actually were like saying like that. You were actually like, yeah, let's go. And I did feel really bad because we went into all the Beatles shops, and we went to that great museum, and and then we had some wonderful Indian food afterward. And after it
Oh
was great.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, that was really nice. And you got a Lambanana as well.
I did. I did. So if folks out there listening have never been to Liverpool, the kind of unofficial or official mascot is the Lambanana.
Yeah,
Tell
it's the
us
non-football orientated mascot, let's put it like that.
Tell me
Yeah,
about
the
the
Lambanana.
Lambanana.
Well, I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but it was basically comes from the fact that the Liverpool port was the biggest port in the UK, as probably in Europe at a certain time, in the Victorian sort of times, and they were known for bringing in bananas and lamb were two major imports that would come into the UK through the port of Liverpool. And so for some reason, it's a very Scouse thing to do, to decide to combine these two things. So they combine them in a sculpture. So the front half of the sculpture, well, I guess all of the sculpture is a lamb with its legs and face, but the tail turns into a banana. I don't know, it is as weird as it
It
sounds.
is.
Let's
And
be
I
honest.
remember the first time I saw it, because I didn't know anything about the Lambanana, and I was like, Allie, what the fuck is that?" And you were like, "Oh, it's the Lambanana." And it was like it was just a regular
Obviously.
thing. Yeah, obviously that is a Lambanana. And so then I became obsessed with the Lambananas, and I saw a bunch, because there's a bunch of huge Lambananas around the city
Mhm.
that have been
Yeah.
painted by different artists. And every time we saw one, I would just be like, "Lambanana, Lambanana, there's another Lambanana." And Allie and some of the other folks we were with are like, yeah, but that's another Lambanana. It's been there." But it's so quirky. I loved it. I ended up buying a little Lambanana sculpture to give to my partner Bayard, because I was like, if anyone is going to appreciate this, it's Bayard.
Yeah.
And he did, and now he has it up in his office. It's great.
Oh, good.
A little
That's
red
good.
Lambanana. And I also bought the purple wheelie bin.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yes, the purple bin. Yes, to prove you're a true Scouser, if you live in Liverpool itself, your wheelie bin is purple, and that's how you know you're really a Scouser.
So I bought a mini wheelie bin, and on the front it says, "I've wheelie been to Liverpool."
There you go.
Because the only thing I love more than Lambananas are terrible puns.
Exactly. We
So
embraced all of that
I love
on
it
that
though. I
day.
love it
It
though.
was
But
good.
I get what you're saying about living in a tourist spot but not doing touristy things. Like, I live in New York City, and I've never been up the Empire State Building. I've never actually been to I've seen the Statue of Liberty, but I've never been to the Statue of Liberty. I should actually go. I think Baird and I should do a day of where we're just tourists in the city and do
Mm,
like the hop on, hop off, because I'm
yeah.
there's so much history of the city that I actually don't know of a lot about. I just know, like, that's the Empire State Building and that's the Chrysler Building and things like that. But yeah, so thank you for being a tourist for the day in the place that you see every day. I really appreciated it. But so I first thing I would like to know is, like, just how you got into gaming, because it's an interesting story, because it kind of like me, like, I got into gaming like kind of a meandering sort of way.
Yeah.
So tell me how you got into gaming originally.
Yeah, because most people we meet in the industry have sort of always wanted to do it, haven't they? Since
Mm-hmm.
they were kids, and
Mm-hmm.
they've pretty much that's all they've done. They've worked in the games industry in whatever role. So no, I never considered it at all. I studied history of art, obviously. That's a really sensible thing to do at university because I thought I was going to be a lawyer. So I was going to go and do a law degree, a law conversion degree
Oh.
afterwards, which is a route you can do in the UK. And I got sort of sidetracked by art and the business of art during that degree because I worked for a gallery. And I just wanted to work. I didn't want to go back and carry on with more school. So yeah, I did other things for quite a long time in the art business. And but at a certain point in my early 30s, my younger brother had been in the industry a little while by then, and he was a designer. And he said to me, one day I was sort of talking about work, and he said, "You would be a really good producer." And I said, "What the hell is that?" I had no idea that, I mean, I'd heard of a producer from like film, you know. I didn't know it had anything to do with games. I didn't know it was a job. So he kind of explained what it was. And I thought, oh yeah, it does sound really interesting, but like I don't know anything about games. I don't know technically speaking, how they're made at all. So I don't know if I'd be any good at this. But at the time, I was working with a consultancy that does sort of leadership training for leaders. That so for senior leaders, for people in the manufacturing industries, how to build high performing teams, all that sort of stuff. So I've been working with them for a few years. And so the whole idea of how do you get teams working together really effectively? How do you build teams? How do you maintain teams? How do you get teams that like within a team working well, but teams working together with other teams, which is very common in manufacturing,
Mhm.
those sorts of industries as well as games. So I went to see the development director at one of Sony's first party studios. and we had a long chat, and he ended up hiring me.
Oh, wow.
Because, yeah, he saw that my skills that I had were very transferable in
Yeah.
terms of project management skills, leadership skills, and this whole work I've been doing around high-performing teams. So, yeah, I got an associate producer job there, but very quickly sort of progressed, I guess, because those skills did prove to be transferable.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I had the best time. I still look back so fondly at Evolution Studios. Yeah, so that's how I got into games, but I ended up not staying for a hell of a long time there for various reasons. The games industry still suffers a bit with some of these problems,
Yeah, of
but
course.
they're not the best places for they can sometimes not be the best places for women to work.
Yeah.
And so I was offered an opportunity to go into a car company. This is such a long story, but I basically was doing all the license agreements for Drive Club. So we were working on a game called Drive Club, PlayStation 4. Originally it was going to be a launch title, didn't quite make it for launch. But we were making a fantastic driving game that was really showcasing, especially some of the visual capabilities of the PS4. The most incredible art in that game you'll ever see in a driving game still, I would
remember
say.
Drive Club. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to get licenses for all of those cars in that game because they were all real world cars. So one of my responsibilities as a producer there was to get all of those licenses. So I traveled around the world and met all the car companies, pitched the game, did the negotiation with the license agreements. And one of those companies was Bentley Motors. So I ended up joining them because they're very close to where I live here in the Northwest.
Oh, wow.
There was like, 10 minutes from my house and this job. And they were looking to build their licensing and partnerships department. And it was just this great opportunity to be part of doing that. So after Sony, I went to Bentley Motors and was there for nearly 7 years.
Wow, that's cool.
And that whole time, I learned a hell of a lot. All the promotions and all the growing of the business, the commercial side of it, the product development side of it, because I was responsible for the brand extensions and co-branding. So that's everything from watches to eyewear to golf clubs to furniture. That I could go on and on.
Anything they put
loads of different products.
that huge bee on.
Yeah, with bees, bee and wings, and all this sort of stuff, and some really beautiful partnerships. Where like with whiskey, with the Macallan whiskey, for example, was one of my partnerships, and so yeah, and that went on until I'd progressed to a certain point, and I was constantly like. There were some amazing people there, and I learned a hell of a lot. But I was always looking back to my time at Evo, thinking, oh, but I had so much fun working in games. It was so much more fun. And it was high stakes and high stress, but I never didn't enjoy it.
Right.
And so I was always thinking about, oh, maybe I'll go back. And I sort of thought with everything that I learned in this very corporate environment, where the management and leadership of people had become crucial to my success there. And I could see that that was a skill set that was needed in the games industry.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, I thought I could do something useful by going back. Like, not only would I enjoy it, but I think I could make a positive difference if I did do it, rather than stay where I was, where, I was in a big corporate world that was really, tough, but everybody was incredibly highly competent. So you're thinking, am I really making as big an impact with all this effort I'm putting in? It was honestly all about the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a real limit to the amount of satisfaction I get out of that side of things.
Yeah.
We want the business to do well so that we all have jobs, and we want things to be successful. But my passion is always in the thing that we're making and the impact it's having on the people that are choosing to buy that thing or play that thing or whatever it is. So yeah, I was tempted to go back and ended
It
up
always
going
pulls
back.
you back in. it's like
Yeah.
gaming calls to you. It's just like, oh, okay, maybe they've fixed all the problems since I've been gone.
Yeah.
So
It's still a
let's go
work in
back.
progress, Jess, I would say. But it has
It
progressed.
has.
And I think there are different parts of the world maybe experience this differently as well. The UK is, we're a small island at the end of the day, and the games industry exists in clusters around the country,
Hmm.
and each cluster has its own sort of culture and identity in a
Yeah.
way.
So it's amazing to me because I'm in New York City, and there's not a lot of AAA game studios here. And now that Avalanche is gone, there's even less. But there's so many indie studios, and the indie folks are really kind of close knit, which is great. But it's so weird because traveling to Guilford, I went to Guilford over the summer with Hamish, and it's the first time I had been in one of those like video game towns. I would call it, because Guildford, for the folks that don't know, is a suburb about 30 minutes by train outside of London, and it's really small. And it's really small, mostly residential. The downtown area is literally like 3 or 4 streets, and then it kind of starts sprawling out. There are 35 game studios, at least. Like, I know of, I was looking it up while we were there, because we're walking down the street, and he's like, there's Larian, and there's we're about to go over to Media Molecule, and it was just wild that, like, that's another game studio, and that's another game studio, and we had just walked out of our hotel, and then here's this, and here's this. And it's wild because we met with some folks, and I was like, so how do you deal with, like, secrecy and all of that type of stuff? And they still deal with secrecy, but it's like everybody just knows we talk about the things that we can talk about, but everybody
Yeah.
understands it when it's like, I can't talk about that. It's like,
Hmm.
of course. It was wild, and I was like, how cool would that be to just live in the little place and just be like, if one studio, because I'm sure they're all kind of poaching from each other as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
But that probably means that if one studio is not doing well, then maybe those folks that might get laid off or something can find something else.
Yeah, it's not just that though, it's also, if you imagine, especially in indie studios, there's a limited number of roles.
Yeah.
And so there's a limited ability to be promoted within a smaller studio. And as much as when you run a small studio, you don't want people to leave, you invest in their growth and you want them to stay forever. Sometimes them staying isn't the right thing for them.
Yeah.
To take the next step, to get that wider bit of experience, to start making a game is the type of game that they really want to make, whereas your studio isn't making that.
Right.
If they go down the road to a studio down the road, you haven't lost them forever, is how I see it. That's how we are in Liverpool, I think, or how it has been in Liverpool while I was there. Because there's generations of developers who have grown up together at the
Yeah.
different studios, and so they all kind of, well, there's lots of connection, and we spent the last sort of 4 years growing those connections and supporting those connections further, because if you have the chance to hire somebody back and they've gone and gained a load more experience somewhere else and some new skills, and they're ready for something, and you've got an opportunity for them, you haven't got to relocate them, they haven't got to uproot their family. It makes good sense for us to sort of work in these clusters, I think.
So that's the perfect segue to
Mhm.
talk about Liverpool GameChangers, because kind of like Guildford, Liverpool, I don't know how many, I mean, I'm sure you probably do, how many studios are just in Liverpool, because it's one of those things where, like, right over here and right over there. And the same way in Stockholm. Like, you go to Stockholm and there's a little cluster of, like, here's the Avalanche Studios are right across the street is EA, and like,
Yeah,
you have to,
yeah.
like, put up like, blackout curtains so that you can't, like, see into each other's offices. It's very interesting and very weird. But talk about Liverpool GameChangers and how that came to be, and how you became, like, co-chair of this,
Yeah.
and why, like, community building, with coalition building, I would call it, actually,
Hmm.
with game studios is so important.
So it started out because this feels weird to say this now, given the circumstances that we're in as an industry, but you may remember not that long ago, we couldn't hire enough people.
Yeah.
We were everywhere across the industry. Everyone was hiring post sort of COVID and just after COVID. And so there were in the UK at that time, sort of in 2022 into 2023, there were thousands of jobs being advertised every month across the UK, which for an industry which is probably about 50,000 people across the whole of the country, having 5 or 8,000 jobs open at any one time is massive.
Yeah. Wow.
And this sort of hit the news in a way. Everybody was talking about this so-called skills crisis, because what everybody was hiring for the most part were leads or seniors, or they were trying to. And so this caused local authorities. So in the Liverpool City region is not just the city of Liverpool, it's boroughs around that. So it's a decent sized area. And within that area, because we've been making games in Liverpool since the 80s, there is a heritage, and it's hard to say how many studios there are if you include all the sort of really micro indie little groups, but there's probably easily 25 good sized studios, sort of more than 12 people.
Yeah.
And the local authority therefore cares about that industry. It's quite important because they're good jobs. So the local authority careers hub, which its role is to try to get young people into different industries, and make sure the pathways are there to get them into, whether it be a job in the NHS as a nurse or wherever, or whatever it is, in manufacturing or whatever. Same for games. So they sort of contacted various studios, and me at Avalanche being one, saying, we want to do some round tables to talk about this skills crisis you're having, because they see you've advertising all these roles. Why can't you hire people locally for this? What aren't we providing that's meaning you're not able to access the talent that you need? So they invited us in, and I think there were probably about 8 studios represented at the first meeting or so, and we went along. And it was kind of as things were opening up after the pandemic, and so we hadn't been socializing as an industry at all for what felt like a really long time. And so we walked into the room, and there was just loads of people that we knew. Like I would be like, "Oh, hey, it's so and so. I've not seen you for like 10 years." And so it was this really, we all just clicked and bonded. And we sat there, and the facilitators said afterwards that we all acted like we were in the same team, and we were using the same acronyms and the same language, and we were talking about having all of the same types of problems. So we had a really great time, and Jamie Brayshaw was one of the people who was there, who I had worked with at Evolution really closely as it happened, but I hadn't seen him I'd only seen him off and on in the years since then. So we sat down next to each other, and we were really happy to see each other. We were chatting away, and we got flip chart paper out. Jamie was drawing, we got really creative. We bonded over all these problems that we saw, as in, oh, the graduates coming out of university, they don't have the right skills. Oh, we don't get enough women or people of color coming into our industry in our region at all. What do we do about that? Why are girls turning off STEM subjects, before they're even at secondary school? What do we do about that? And how do we get people from the software development industry to come in and transition into games? We were talking about all these different things that we saw were problems, and we really bonded, and it was great. And then they set another date for us to have a second round table. And we went to that round table, and maybe 2/3 the number of people turned up for that one.
Oh.
And we started to sort of say the same things over again. And by the end of that, both Jamie and I were saying, we can't, like, as much fun as this is, we could just go to the pub because we're not achieving anything.
Yeah, you're just chatting.
We're just chatting. And as much as that's great, this is not what we're here to do. So we went back and forth and we had a couple more meetings, and through those meetings we decided to hold ourselves accountable to actually do something. So we decided to make a pledge, and we decided we were going to publicize this pledge, and we were all going to sign up to a pledge, and then we were going to figure out how to deliver on the pledge. It's a classic games
Yeah, of
industry
course.
approach.
The idea is first.
Yeah. We just, you figure it out later, don't you? You figure out the details later. So we made this pledge where we said we wanted Liverpool to be the best place. The short way of telling you this pledge is that we wanted Liverpool to be the best place to make games in the world. And the local authority were like, oh, that's such an ambition, like that's so broad, it's so vague. And we were like, yep, we know.
They're like, hey, set SMART goals, the SMART.
Yeah, we're like, nah, forget about that. No, we want to be inspired. Like we also, it's important, I think, when you're coming together to remember that you have to make it inspiring for everybody. You have to feel like you're there as part of a mission that matters and that would actually have an impact. Just making things a little bit better is not getting you out of bed in the morning or making you work extra on top of your day job to do something like this. And we also knew that we wanted to look at the whole picture end to end. We didn't just want to look at what the Careers Hub rightly wants to focus on, and that's that transition from education into industry. We wanted to look at all of it. So we made the pledge, we publicised the pledge, we had the mayor, the Metro mayor, Steve Rotherham, he signed the pledge. We got the BBC interested because of him. So they did a piece about us. So we got in the news. And through doing that, we got loads of other people to join us on the pledge. So we've got pretty much all of the studios in the Liverpool City region. We also have other charities, other partners that see themselves adjacent to or think they can help us, whether they be the local universities and colleges that are all taking part with it, whether it be marketing agencies that feel a resonance with us, what we're doing, and want to see how they can help, or whether it be lawyers who say, well, we've got expertise that we can offer to help. So we've got about 36 different companies now as pledgees, as members, and we split. So Jamie and I sort of, because we were the most gobby in the room, I think, ended up being co-chairs, basically.
Gotcha.
That's how that happened. So, and we have driven things, tried to drive things strategically in a way that helps everybody else be involved in a way that they can manage to balance. Because it's really important to us that it isn't just the bigger studios, because obviously we've got PlayStation in Liverpool, amazing team. They've got their sort of their offices there where they're doing a lot of QA and operations and the PlayStation Store and that sort of thing. And then they've also got a development studio, a first party development studio in Firesprite in the city. They represent a lot of people in the industry in the city, but and they've obviously got more capacity to turn up to meetings because they've got more staff, and they've got amazing frameworks for learning and development in place, as you'd expect. But we want to make sure part of why we're getting together to sort of address challenges together is because we want the micro or small studios to benefit from the wisdom and knowledge and best practice of the bigger studios. You'll have lots of small studios that don't have a HR manager internally, for example, not because they don't want one, but because it's a cost that they can't, manage.
Yeah, if
So,
there's three people, then HR is
best
not on your list yet,
Yeah.
3 to 5 people. Yeah, but
Exactly.
there's also, and I'm not going to say the name of the studio, I met a studio while I was in Guildford that had been around for 15 years and did not have an HR department.
Yes, and yes, exactly. That is the thing. So yeah, it was important to us that all the voices got to be heard, and so we split. We're split into 4 strategic groups, and I lead one of them. And we split up the career into these groups, basically. So my group looks at in-career development.
Oh,
So
cool.
we're in the process of co-developing a leadership course with the City of Liverpool College, which will be delivered for anybody basically within the Liverpool City region that wants to develop their leadership skills in the games industry. So we're working with them on that, and that's about as well leaving a legacy of something that will live on, because it will be a course that the college will run. And those cohorts of people that go on that course will work together at some studios, will move around the different studios, and we're hoping to leave a legacy of really strong leadership skills in the region.
That's really cool. It also kind of dispels a myth that some folks that may not be in the game industry kind of think that all of these game studios are like rivals, or like they don't like each other or anything like that. It's like that's not true, especially if we have studios that are close to each other. Like we all know each other, we like each other, we want each other to succeed. Like
Yeah,
this whole the days of the console wars and all of this stuff, like that's not really a thing. Like I
no,
know folks at Microsoft, I know folks at PlayStation, they're all lovely people and they all know each other as well, because we all at the end of the day we celebrate when another studio ship something, because shipping is so hard. And
yeah,
if it's
yeah.
really successful, then even better for them. Like we want them to succeed, because we also want them to want us to succeed. And I don't know, I see things online, and of course, you know, discourse and everything, and it seems like people think that our studios don't talk, or that we're not just people that like each
Oh
other
yeah.
and go, especially if you're in one of these places where there's 35 studios within a 15 block radius. You're going to be seeing each other at lunch when you go out for pizza. You're going to be seeing each other at the pubs. I think Hamish told me that there's like 2 or 3 different pubs in Guildford that everyone goes to.
But
So
more
we
than
all know
that,
each
you're
other.
working together. So what something a lot of people don't realize is that we work together. So we co-develop. So for example, Radical Forge, where I am now, work with Double 11, which is another studio in Middlesbrough, a very big studio, very well established and successful studio. We're co-developing Golf with Friends 2 for them right
Aw,
now. And we have worked with them on other things in the past. And the same goes for in Liverpool. I
Golf with
know I
Friends is
won't
so
name
fun.
names, but yeah, the bigger AAA projects are never just made by one studio, as you know, Jess.
Mhm.
And the work gets parceled out, and these indie studios clustering around bigger studios, they do that partially because they're able to help. We're able to provide a team of 8 people to help you port something into VR, or help you do something like that, you know, to make a piece of a game for you, or to make a whole game for you. That's how clusters function, and it's really important that when you're co-developing, that you're building strong relationships across studios, because you've got to communicate, and deliver on what they need. So
So it's
yeah.
also great that Liverpool, as a city, like the actual Liverpool government, and I'm never one to be like, yay, government, but I do have to give it up to them to see what's happening in Liverpool and say, this is something we want to cultivate. New York City is now starting to do that. So, as most people know, like New York City has one of the most bustling, I would say, outside of LA, which of course has Hollywood and everything. New York City is probably one of the biggest movie and television show of producers in the country. So, New York City, as a government entity, has always had Made in New York. Well, not always, but like they've Made in New York. It's like you can see the seal everywhere. You can see it at the end of movies. There's a seal, so like Made in New York. And there's a government agency. There's like a mayor's office specifically for entertainment, and there's people and liaisons that try to get more people to come here to film,
Mhm.
try to figure out how on earth there are 70 people going to all film something in Central Park on the same weekend. Like it's great. And so they've been doing that for movies and commercials and like music videos and all of that for a very long time. They're just starting, and I would say within the past 2 or 3 years, to get into video games. So there's the Office of Digital Entertainment that was started. I don't know if it was started, but it now has more than one person who does it, because I met them at a Play NYC in 2020. 21, I believe. It was the first Play NYC that they started doing after the pandemic, and it was a very small sort of thing. But they had just started trying to really um, get people to come here to make video games. And there's so many indies, and so there's a bunch of like, so if you're an indie studio in New York and you haven't talked to Empire State Development, go to their website because they have so many tax breaks. They have so many like incentives for you. They have things if you're less than 10 people. They have things if you're like less than 50 people. And when Avalanche closed, I was actually trying to work with them to figure out like because they know that New York is expensive. New York is expensive to live. It is expensive to film. It's expensive to have office space. That's why there aren't tons of studios here.
Mhm.
And with Avalanche being gone, it's like one less AAA studio. But they are really trying to incentivize people to make digital things here. And is it late in the game? Maybe, but now is better than never. You know, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is now. So they really are starting to put some money into that. I don't have the numbers in front of me because I completely forgot about like talking about this today. But if you go to their website, you can sign up for and they will send you all of the money. Like or all of the info about the money you can get from the state. And also, if you're in New York State and you don't live in New York City, I think up in Troy, New York, which is upstate, but not super upstate. I'm actually not sure because they were just like, "Do you have anyone that lives in Troy?" And we're like, "No, I don't have anyone that lives in Troy." They're trying to make that like the Cary, North Carolina
Oh, yeah.
of New York. So if you don't know, for the listeners, Cary, North Carolina is where Epic Game Studio is. So almost everyone that lives, I mean, it's a very small town, and it's just you know people that live in North Carolina, and then a whole bunch of video game devs. That live there in Cary, North Carolina, making I don't know exactly. I mean, Fortnite probably, but they're trying to make it like the Cary, North Carolina. So it's like if you live in Troy, New York, then you get 35% back on
Yeah.
your things instead of 25% if you live in New York. So Empire State Development is what it's called. You can go to the website and you can look it up. And unfortunately, it couldn't really help Avalanche Studios, but it could help, especially those indies that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And they encourage, even if you're making your own game like solo, they also still have things for you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and I've talked to the folks there, and I'm hoping that that sort of coalition building can happen in New York like it is in
Yeah, why
Liverpool.
not?
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
why the
And
fuck
I would
not?
say to anybody who doesn't realize that this exists, because it exists pretty much everywhere where the games are being made. Certainly, to my knowledge, in the UK and in Europe, you should put your hand up,
Yeah.
contact, reach out, get them, because the more they hear from us, the more they will do to help.
Yes.
They don't know what they don't know. It's quite interesting, the journey that the team in Liverpool City region have been on in terms of learning about how we do, what we do need, what we don't need. Otherwise, they are thinking of things they could do to help, which might not be what we need. But this is something that Game Changers has really impressed upon me, and how we speak when we're talking to all the studios. It's no good sitting back with your arms folded going, "Oh, we don't get the right people with the right skills," or, "Oh, we're not given the funding we need," or, "Oh, we're not," and we're just, being all sort of passive aggressive about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Like, if you want it to change, you've got to help people understand, because our industry historically does not talk about itself,
Yeah.
doesn't open its doors. People don't know how we do what we do. It all seems like fairy dust, and not real people doing it, when it is just real people. And that was the latest. We do talks to schools, and we do talks to teachers and parents about the industry, about the types of roles you can do. And we always cause a bit of a shock, because the northwest of England, around Liverpool, people around there don't necessarily think that if you say we make games here, they'll think, oh, it'll be some rubbish game that no one's heard of. But when you say, like, well, the latest, I'm going to say it wrong, because in my head it's FIFA, and it will always be FIFA.
Isn't it FIFA? I've always
What's it
said
called?
FIFA.
Yeah, well, it's not called FIFA anymore, but it's called EA something. Oh, I can't
Oh,
remember.
we
But
know what you're talking about, and I
you
will
know what I'm talking
probably
about.
always say FIFA.
The latest version of FIFA was made in Runcorn in the northwest, just outside Liverpool.
Oh, wow.
And that's a game that everybody around the world knows and
Yeah,
loves,
it
and is a
does.
really, really, really big game. And when you say that to school kids in Runcorn, and they're looking at you like you're mad. You're like, no, it's just some people up the road, and you could work there one day if you wanted to. It's not unreachable. Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, it makes me think because also talking to the folks from Empire State Development in New York, like there's money there that goes unused. Like they
Hmm.
have earmarked because they just don't have enough people signing up for it, which is why they were trying to do so much outreach. Like I didn't know about it at all. I
Hmm.
didn't realize that there was an Office of Digital Development. I just know that there was for film and TV. Which has been around since I don't know 70s or 80s or something like that, and but there's money out there, especially even if you only have an idea. You don't even have to have a full plan. You have to like write down here's the game you want to make. Here's your like timeline, which can also change. And it's I don't know. The money's out there. Do it. Make your game, even if you're in New York, where it's so expensive to live, like especially in New York. Get those tax breaks because they're waiting there for you. I want to ask you, talking about Game Changers is great, but you have a new role at Radical Forge where you are the COO, Chief Operating
Hmm.
Officer.
Yes.
Can you tell us what that means? Because I'm sure some people are like, Chief Operating Officer. It's also, operations is such a different word depending on what industry you're in, depending on what studio you're at. It's kind of operations is such a
Yeah.
loaded term. Like Allie and I both know because we've
Yeah.
both been in
Yeah.
operations for a very long time. So what does a COO do?
Well, so I guess COO is not as common in games, I would say, possibly. And generally, in corporate world, you are usually the right hand of the CEO running the companies. So not the offices of the company, but what the company does. And that's how we see it at Radical Forge. So I am responsible for all the people and all the processes. So everybody that makes games and everybody else that helps them make games and how we make the games. Yeah, all the team I feel responsible for, and the management structure comes up to me
Wow.
from the
No
team. So
pressure.
yeah, it's but it's about how, again, coming back to this, how do teams work together. Our CEO is an incredible person, um, Bruce Slater, who has this vision, creativity, and what we make and why we make what we make is very much his area, but how we do it is mine.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're enjoying it. I see from your face just talking about it. It seems
Yeah,
like
I
a great
am.
job.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, everyone will say this, won't they? I think, but this is true. Like the team are incredible. We're about we're around 70 people at the moment. We're growing a little bit. Um, we're working on some really cool stuff. The team are super talented, really agile in the true sense of that word. They can turn things around creatively, like I've never seen anywhere else. Um, but they're just really good people. I think the culture of the company is amazing. And my job really is to make sure that we maintain and build an environment that allows them to thrive. So it allows them to really do their best work, to enjoy their work. So I'm ironing out some of those process issues that you get. The games industry in general, every studio I've been in, and the ones that I know well because of the Game Changers work I've been doing and the different people I know, there can be a lot of dysfunction.
Yeah.
And I always
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What is this dysfunction you speak of? I do not know it.
And I think I see in my time through being in games and being in other sectors as well, I see that dysfunction maybe differently to other people. I don't see it to me, it's like I guess this is why, if I play games, I play puzzle games because I like to fix things and I really care about people. And so I just see dysfunction. When I see dysfunction, I look at how to unpack it. And I see usually I'm going to blame a process or a system. I look at things systematically. And then we try to make sure that people have the best possible chance to do well where they are, and so again, being able to have really quality feedback conversations, not letting things fester, getting things out on the table, not tolerating people being dicks at all, ever. And I really mean that, like, your culture of your company is the worst thing that you let happen.
Yeah.
And so many times I see things are ignored because people are often in games just the most lovely people you could possibly meet, the most caring, sort of empathetic. They have usually a certain level of geek which is why I love them so much, is why I like them so much. And that means that they're often people who are used to just keeping their head down, in case some horrible alpha dickhead, has a go at them because they like something that's alternative. And that means that if you have somebody in your studio that is more confident and with their strong opinions, what you can get is lots of people putting their head down and saying, oh God, just make this stop. But, I find it hard to say anything. And I think our role as leaders is to make sure that we set a level playing field for everybody so that we don't have that happening. And also that very overconfident person is probably sort of thinking, why isn't anyone else, standing up and saying something as well? Because I like a more sort of interactive way of discussing stuff. So yeah, I just see issues that I see time and time again in all studios as eminently solvable and really fun to solve. And also, I see them as solvable by the people involved, not by a fairy godmother. I'm not coming in waving a magic wand. I'm just facilitating everybody else to do their work.
Yeah, I really hate that. I've been in tech a long time, and it's not just in the game industry. I'm sure it's in every industry, honestly. The trope of the genius asshole, where like this person is tolerated, like, yeah, they're a dick, but they're tolerated because they have good ideas, or they can solve problems, or they've been at the company a long time and they have so much knowledge that you can't really function without that person, so they're just kind of allowed to be a dick. I remember there was one person at Stack Overflow that people complained about a lot, especially the women, because of the way he spoke to people. And I'm not going to say names, obviously, but I was told once that, like, yeah, he's an asshole, but unfortunately he's usually right. And it's like, okay, well then, but he's still an asshole. Like, he can't talk to people this way. And that person is not there now. So let's not like come for Stack Overflow, because I haven't been there in a very long time. But I just remember that sort of, you can be an asshole as long as you are useful and as long as you are really good at your job, has to stop.
Yeah, I think also because I'm sorry, but I fundamentally, there's very few people who aren't replaceable from
Very
any
few.
perspective.
Very
Very
few.
few. And actually, the really talented, especially, and mostly what we're talking about actually is not on the creative side, because I think everybody's got the capacity to be creative in the right environment. And those guys are not as clever as they think they are. So it's generally your really technical programmers that are irreplaceable sometimes, like you say, because of the knowledge they have. I haven't ever met one of those guys that is a terrible dick. Now, possibly they're out there and I haven't met them, but they're not usually the personality type that you have the most problems with. And I think the problem by saying, oh, it's going to be too disruptive to get rid of this person, you're not looking at the cost of the disruption they are causing is having on the rest of the team.
Yeah.
And that is way bigger than I believe than what their impact is.
Because just like you were saying, the people that like to, because they're most of the devs that I know, and I know a lot of game devs, they just want to make games. Like they literally just want to make games. And people in the game industry, we want to make games so bad that we will put up with a lot.
Yeah.
So for every one person who has actually complained about this, you can probably bet that there's 10 to 15
Oh God, yeah.
who or more who have not complained about it because they're just putting their head down and they just want to make a fucking video game.
But I will also say the person who's behaving like a dick, to use the to use the technical term, is oftentimes doesn't realize the impact they're having.
And if no one tells them that, then you can't expect someone to change if you're not like, hey, this isn't working for a lot of folks on the team. So like I feel like if you're ever having a conversation with someone, even if it's a hard conversation, if it is escalated to a point where like some sort of I guess disciplinary action needs to happen, if they're surprised by that, then there is some sort of breakdown in management because they should not be surprised that a disciplinary action is happening because of something they did, unless it's like something they were just like way out of their character or something like that. But if you're having conversations with people about how this is going, then they shouldn't be surprised when like something they said has really made someone want to quit. Because I've seen this. I have seen this.
Oh, God,
but no one has talked to this person, so they didn't know. I mean, I'm not excusing their behavior at all, but it's also a breakdown of the people that are supposed to be managing them.
Exactly, yeah. And I think the feedback thing, it's really surprising to me when I see in companies and in games, it seems to happen a lot of the time because the focus is on we're trying to make games. We're not focusing on developing people or thinking about those management or leadership skills as much. It's not as important. Understandably, we've got bills to pay, we've got games to make. But that's why you have leadership. Like I am not coding, thank God for everybody. That's what I have time in my brain to do is to make sure that any lead in my organization, that I ensure that they get feedback from their team directly and that I'm aware of what they're, through the layers, there's an element of 360 feedback happening so that our blind spots become visible. And therefore we, in a culture where we're not blaming people and we're not, if we're not tolerating dickish behavior, then we're not going around calling people a dick either.
Yeah.
So we're sort of saying, how has this happened? You got really emotional about something. What was going on for you? Oh, that was going on for you. Oh, I understand that. Yeah, that's tough. Okay. How do you think we could communicate this better? Do we have to deal with it? And I am the one that will be in the meeting stopping somebody, while it's happening. And I think because I've got the power to do that.
That is so rare.
But you can
anywhere I've ever been, that is so rare to see someone like in power say like, hold on in the moment. Cause it's always like you let things go in the moment and then talk to them after and then damage is done by that point.
And also they've already hung themselves. Like, you can see the faces of everybody else in the meeting. You can see what's going on. And so it's just about the confidence and the agency to do that. And you have to start that at the top. And if you see that that's happening above you, you think, oh, it's okay for me to sort of put my hand up and say, hey, that wasn't cool. Like, don't blame the person that isn't in the room or don't, whatever it might be. So getting a level of comfort with the feedback, I think, is a crucial part of how in games generally we'll get better at caring for each other and creating better environments.
Before we move on to your stupid little game, I want to ask, what sort of advice would you have for those smaller companies, like we were talking about before, with like 3 to 5 to less than 10 people who they don't have um, maybe the bandwidth to hire someone to do this, to start this sort of culture from jump. So you have like the person who really wants to make the game and they're doing like 5 or 6 different jobs. And if you're making a whole video game with only 3 to 5 people, then everyone is doing 5 or 6 different jobs.
Yeah.
So what is your advice to those folks who have all of the best intentions, but as you scale, things can kind of
Yeah.
problems will also scale if you don't like point them out and try to fix them early on.
Yeah, I think in my experience, the teams of 3, 5, 8, 12, 15, even 20 tend to not have very many issues around that because they tend to be a tight team. And like you say, everybody's doing a bit of everything, which means everybody understands the end-to-end process of what's happening. So they're more empathetic about the challenges that person's
Gotcha. Since
having and
there's
they communicate
visibility
better.
into what everyone
Yeah.
else is doing, then you're not going to get annoyed because you know that this person they're not it's not that they're not doing their job, it's that they
No.
have 17 other things that are more
Yeah.
priority than what you need. Right.
And you'll tend to be also on that basis, often, especially from a technical perspective, like not spending ages on the planning side because you can't afford to. So you're kind of doing quick and dirty,
Mhm.
and things do fall over quite a bit when you do that technically and so on. But when you're a tight, small team, you can kind of
It's
grind
easier
through
to
it,
course correct,
basically.
yeah.
Yeah. And what happens is those teams will be successful potentially with whatever they're doing, and they'll get some income or get some investment and they'll start to grow. And that's where you see the problem when they try to scale that what is essentially fairly dysfunctional if it was to be scaled. So my advice is to really keep things simple, and that means being really clear in defining, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Mhm.
Yeah. So people need to feel safe and secure before they can self-actualize there at the top of that triangle. So if you get your basics right in an organization, so that means for me, that means really clear understanding of what your role is, what your responsibilities are, and that everybody else knows everybody else's role and responsibilities, and that you get your objective, so what it is we're making, really clear. So when you're a really small group of people, you can communicate what game are we making, what's the vision of this thing really clearly, and everyone can be on the same page quite easily. Once you start getting bigger, I mean, I say that maybe they can't, maybe not everybody can. It is a difficult thing to do,
It is.
but it's easier when you're fewer people.
Well, being a
But yeah,
game
if
dev
you're a
and just
small
wanting to
group
make
and as you scale, yeah.
a game is different because than being a manager of other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard, like going from dev to dev manager.
Yeah. And not everyone's cut out for it. That's the other thing to
And that's
remember.
okay. I
And
do
that is
know I do
absolutely
know
okay.
folks that they're like, I want to write code all day. I
Mhm.
don't want to be in charge of people. There's nothing wrong. We're not saying there's anything wrong with being an individual contributor at all.
No, absolutely not. Really not. And having in your company being explicit about that and having honest conversations about what you're good at and what you want to do and what makes you feel fulfilled. There are enough people that like to manage others and get a lot out of that. I think in the games industry we worry that there aren't, but I see them all the time. Who are technically also very good, but there's a lot of fulfillment to be had in the other side. So in a smaller company, you've often got to do both, and that's just how it is. But you must value that part as a games in, you have to value the people and culture, because without that working well, you aren't going to be able to make your game.
Right.
You're going to struggle. So you've got to value it. And I think if you can't get people in-house to help you, then there are lots of external people that can help, getting mentors, There are different organizations that help with that. There are different organizations that can help you outsource a bit of HR to get some good processes, get somebody in to establish a few processes, even if it is just around your hiring processes. So you're recruiting, you're asking the right questions when you're recruiting, things like that.
Yeah, there's just so much legal stuff that's like, why not get help with that?
Yeah. Outsource it. Yeah.
I think that we could probably talk about this for a really long time, and I think you should do like a seminar. You should do like a Alison Lacy teaches you how to build your team at scale. Like series of seminars, because like it's basically like one set of advice for the smaller teams, like you were saying, like the 5 to 12. But then I think as you were saying, as you were alluding to, when you get into the mid-size, where you're really starting to like hire, and then you have teams under teams where you don't have just one big knit team, that's where so much of the things can go wrong. In your management. Like, of course you want it to grow and make your game, but we could all I should have you back like in a couple of months where we just talk about mid-size. So 50 to 100 people in your company. Here's the things to do. Because we could talk about it all day, but that's great, and some really good advice there. See, I told you we are an educational podcast here. But as we're talking about really cool and profound things, it's time to get to a stupid little game. And this game is exceedingly stupid. So I was when I was writing your game, I was like thinking about things about you, and I was like, well, she worked in Liverpool for a really long time, but I've already tortured you enough with like Liverpool things. But you also told me that you like to knit in your hobbies. Oh, I see your face. Don't worry. So I have made a game for you that's called In the Loop.
Oh, very good.
In the Loop, a nearly impossible quiz about knitting and video games.
Oh my god. Oh jeez.
Yep, don't worry. It's I said nearly impossible. You'll get the gist of it. So I started looking up, there's a whole bunch of video games either with knitting or some sort of knitting or crochet. I know that knitting and crochet are two different things. Do not come for me, listeners. They are two very different things, but I kind of put them together in like knitting crafts, knitting art. Actually, I don't want to call it crafts because it's art. Knitting is art and crafts is art. And I get really annoyed when things that women do are relegated to like arts and crafts, and things that men do are just called art. I'm like, no, this is also art. Have you ever seen fucking sweaters that someone has knitted? Okay, anyways, I could go off on that for a while, but yeah, In the Loop, a nearly impossible quiz about knitting and knitting type of things in video games. So don't worry.
I am so scared right now.
Well, I was looking up lots of knitting things in video games, and there are so many that I have never heard of. But again, this is an educational podcast, so
we're just here to learn.
Yeah, we're just here to learn. It's very cool. So the first one. So in 2008's Little Big Planet. Do you remember Little Big Planet? You play as Sackboy, an adorable knitted character that navigates platforms and solve puzzles in order to complete levels. In our solar system, what is the littlest planet? See? Now you're not so worried. So the hint is Pluto apparently doesn't count, and these are all
it's not a planet anymore.
These are all going to be multiple choice.
Oh, cool.
So what is the littlest planet? So A is Mercury, B is Jupiter, or C, fuck it, I'm saying Pluto because it should be the right answer. Two Skinny Jays even wrote a whole song about it.
Oh, you are so kind. Well, I think the answer is A, Mercury, but I like C as an answer as well.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Ding, ding, ding. I should start getting like a little like ding, ding, ding when people get the answer right. That could be fun.
Yes.
So Pluto is no longer a planet, even though it totally should be. And if you've never heard the Pluto is a Planet song by Two Skinny Jays, I think it's from the late 90s. It's a hilarious, like I would call it like nerd rock before nerdcore
Yeah.
was like a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a great song. So yes, Mercury is the right answer, but it should be Pluto. It should
Also,
be.
shout out to Sackboy. What a cool game
Yeah, Media
world that is.
Molecule, Siobhan
Yeah.
Reddy. Hi, Siobhan. So Siobhan Reddy
Hmm.
is one of my like gaming idols, I would say. I recently met her virtually because Hamish knows Siobhan, and she's just so cool and so. If you've never heard of Siobhan Reddy, there's lots of like interviews with her on YouTube. She's the head of Media Molecule, and they have an amazing company culture, an
Hmm.
amazing, like an aspirational company culture. So,
Definitely. Yeah.
so look up Siobhan Reddy. Hi, Siobhan. I doubt she's listening. I'll send it to her and be like, I gave you a shout out. Okay, cool. The next one, in Yoshi's Woolly World. It's an adorable side scroller from 2015 where everything is crocheted or based on yarn. In what age did the woolly mammoth live? So again, we've got multiple choice. So A is Bronze Age, B is the Ice Age, like the movie, or C is age is just a number.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm feeling C. But I think I mean, surely the films were historically accurate.
Absolutely, we're
Ice
historically
Age
accurate.
must
They're
be, yeah.
Ice Age were documentaries
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
household.
Yes, agree.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely. But yeah, you're kind of getting the idea of like the game now because I was looking up these games and I've heard of Yoshi's Woolly World and I played Little Big Planet, but I was like, there's so many obscure games with like knitting in them that I'm like, there's no way I can give you the description of the game and then expect you to know the name of, like, we're going to talk about a game called Loom that came out in 1990. Yeah. So, okay. You're doing great so far.
Yay.
So, okay. Nintendo Japan released a game, I Am Teacher Super Mario Sweater, in 1986. And it's a really cool game. I see quote unquote game. So you basically can input your measurements and you can make designs on the game, and it makes a sweater knitting pattern for you that fits your body. And it's complete with Mario characters that you could put into the pattern so that you could knit like
Oh
Mario
my
and
God.
Nintendo sweaters. So this was 1986. It came out on the Famicom. So this isn't multiple choice. It's just something that I want to know because I know very little about knitting. How long does it take to actually knit an entire sweater?
Well, I can show you I'm knitting one at the moment and I think I've been doing it for like 10 years. That's how it feels.
I know a lot of folks too that's like they have their long-term project and then like here's some socks that I
Yeah.
could bang out
Like
in like a week.
here's like a throw that I knitted.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Well,
It's
it's not, but
huge.
it's massive. And I don't know, I did that maybe in like a month because
Wow.
it's just really simple. But
But
this
it's
sweater,
huge.
and you put things down and you're like, oh, I'll start something else. And then you don't finish it. And then so I have like, yeah, I'm not the person to ask, I
Well,
would
10
say.
years is an answer.
As long as you want.
That's really funny because it's weird. Because I'll see people selling their like handmade knitted sweaters, and then I'll see people, like other folks complaining about the price, and I'm like, you don't understand the hours. Like you can go to H&M and buy a knitted sweater for $12 that was made by a machine somewhere, but for you to have a hand knitted sweater, because you're not just knitting the sweater, you also have to there's things you have to do with it afterwards, right? To make sure that the
Yeah.
wool is going to be something that you could wear. You have to felt I don't know what it's called because I am not a knitter. Um but I'm like, why aren't you charging $5 million for this sweater? Like at least, and people are like, but that sweater's $250. I'm like, this person sat there for 2 weeks and made this sweater. Like, of
Yeah,
course it's
yeah,
gonna cost a
yeah.
lot of money. It should cost more. It
Yeah.
No matter what knitted sweaters cost, they should cost more.
I'm with you.
But yeah, Super Mario Sweater, I don't know if it's still available for like
That
emulator.
sounds That
It's
sounds
really
so
cool.
good.
Yeah, it's literally you put in you take your measurements, you put in your measurements, and you can also not just put in like Nintendo characters. I mean, it was 1986, so there weren't a lot of Nintendo characters at that time, but you not only could you put it in, but you could also make your own knitting pattern. So if you wanted specific shapes and things, you could put it in there and it would like you could print it out and it would be a pattern for you to make your sweater. So
That is amazing.
it's really, really cool. See, we're an educational podcast.
Yeah.
So you got that one right as well. You're batting 1,000. Oh, I mentioned Loom before. So there's a game called Loom. It is a 1990 adventure game by LucasArts. And I had never heard of this game, but it looks really cool. So it's an adventure game and it centers around a guy named Bobbin Threadbare, which I love a good pun and a name. And he is he's an ostracized member of like the Weavers Guild. And apparently this is not a whimsical game. This is like a game where like the Weavers are really mistreated and you have to it's called Loom because the island that they're on is called Loom and there's like a great loom that you have to use that there's also this like instrument mechanic. It's really interesting. But the Weavers Guild, he's part of the Weavers Guild and he needs to get to the great loom in order to end the suffering of his people. So
Wow.
interesting name, like whimsical names, not a whimsical game, apparently. There's also swans in it for some reason. I don't know. I was looking up things about Loom and it came out in 1990. So, when was the first loom invented in real life?
Oh my God.
So, I'm going back to multiple choice.
Okay.
So, A is 1986, B is 4400 BC, or C is the loom actually hasn't been invented yet, and all of our cloth throughout history was made by fairies.
Well, I was going to say, I reckon it's prehistoric type time because I feel like we probably wanted to get clothes quite quickly. I think our obsession with clothes probably started pretty early.
Pretty early. You know, Infinity Nikki needs to have the prehistoric game next.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, the 4400 BC, is that what you said?
Yeah.
That sounds legit.
It
Was
is.
that somewhere like, I don't know, like in Egypt or something?
It was unclear.
Okay.
Because I think that the technology kind of, what do they call it when a couple of different civilizations
same time,
kind of around the same time because the
aliens dropped the technology in the places. That's what I saw on YouTube. Yeah.
See, that's headcanon now. Like we had the loom because the aliens dropped it from the Loom Island from this video game. Oh my gosh. So yes. So see, you're batting 1,000. That means good, right? Yes, you're batting 1,000. I know nothing about baseball, but I'm going to say the batting 1,000 means good.
I was thinking cricket when you said that.
Oh, I like that better. Speaking of things I don't understand, cricket.
Cricket.
So I want to go to a cricket match. They have them here in New York. I think there's one out. There's a cricket field in Jersey, and I don't want to go to a full match because can't they last like a week or something?
It depends. And I'm not an expert. My husband would be horrified if he thought I was on a podcast talking about cricket. But you have test matches, which take 5 days, I think, because you play each other multiple times. It's like best out of 3 or 5 or something. I don't know.
Every time
and
I
that's
watch
over many days.
Every time I watch cricket, though, it's like I don't know what is happening, but it's fascinating.
They won't be doing test match cricket where in New Jersey. It will probably be like the 2020 stuff. So they have so many overs, and that means the bowler throws the ball 6 times, I'm going to say, and that's 1 over. And they'll say it's a 50 over game, so they can throw 6 balls 50 times.
Yeah, those were all words you just said.
Stuff happens. Yeah. Cricket.
Cool.
It can be fun.
I don't even remember now how we got onto cricket, but I'm glad we did. It is an educational podcast. Okay, so next to the last question. So in Kirby's Epic Yarn, which I didn't write down the year that came out, but Kirby's Epic Yarn, it was a DS game. An evil wizard transforms Kirby into a yarn ball and sends him to Patchland, a fabric world filled with thread monsters and polyester backgrounds. So, what is the most expensive yarn in the world? And
Ooh.
I have A, B, and C. So, A is yarn made from vicuña wool from the Andes. B, Shire sheep wool from Middle Earth. Or C, Snooky wool from the Jersey Shore.
Yeah. This is the vicuña thing is interesting because of my Bentley days. We did some work with Loro Piana, who used that wool in
Oh,
their stupidly expensive sweaters.
yes. So
Yes.
apparently, vicuña wool from the Andes is up to $600 per kilogram. And cashmere, which is what, when I was writing this question, is what I thought was the most expensive wool. Cashmere is around $80 per kilogram. And then $600 or up to $600. It was like anywhere from like $499 to $600. I was like, that's weird. We'll just say 600. But yeah, it's like the vicuña. It looks like a bit of a llama, I
Yeah.
think, from the Andes. They're very cute.
I think they brush, is it that they just brush them and gather the wool from them like that, and it's all done by hand, and I don't know, something.
So yeah, apparently getting the wool is a difficult process only by specific people who are like allowed to own the vicuña.
Yeah.
And so Bentley made vicuña sweaters.
We didn't make them, but we did some work with Loro Piana, who is an Italian brand that
Oh,
I think I'm right in saying did or does.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want a vicuña wool sweater, I don't even know how much a vicuña wool sweater would cost. But just think that number one, $600 per kilogram. And someone has to actually knit it. Because I'm
Yeah.
hoping that if it's going to be something that expensive, hopefully maybe they're not doing it by machine. But I don't
No,
know.
I think they're still using machines, but they're yeah, I think they are still using machines for that sort of thing. Yeah.
I mean,
They
that's
shouldn't though,
true.
should they?
Well, I mean, if you want one sweater per month, if you need to scale up from that, but I think you should charge less. If it's being made
Yes.
by machine, then you should
Yeah,
charge
yeah.
less than if it was being made by by hand. So yeah, so see, you're still 100% so far. And I have one bonus question that is not video game related.
Okay.
In Weezer's 1994 hit "Undone," the sweater song, if you want to destroy his sweater, what should you do? And I have multiple choice.
Oh,
So
okay.
A, you pull this thread and spin around really fast. B, you tie the thread to a rock and throw it off the Empire State Building. Or C, you pull this thread as I walk away, as I walk away.
Exactly. I heard that song really recently for some reason. I think
Really?
it was on This American Life
Oh.
did a whole it was like it was a thread in an episode, that song.
Mm.
So yeah, it's C. Hold on to the thread while I walk away, whatever it is. Yeah.
The Weezer, that album, the Blue album that came off of, had a chokehold on me when I was a teenager in the late 90s, and I love that entire album.
Yeah.
I actually listened to it a couple of weeks ago, just all the way through. It's a pretty short album. I saw Weezer. Fun fact about Jess lore. I saw Weezer when I was very young. I think I was like 15. They were at a bar in near Spartanburg, South Carolina, in the mid 90s. They hadn't like blown up yet. And I shouldn't have been allowed in the bar, but I went with my cousin who was older than me, and it was like a really small bar. I wasn't like drinking or anything, but I saw Weezer to a very small bar, and they were amazing.
That's so
They
cool.
were pretty awesome. So, hooray for being old. Get to
Yeah,
see
exactly.
and get into places that you're not supposed to go, without there being photographic evidence and put on Facebook.
Exactly. The stuff we got away with,
Oh my
Jess.
god, yeah, I'm so happy that, my entire teenage life was not on the internet. Uh,
Same.
but, congratulations, you won the game.
Thank you. You made that so easy for me. Thank you, Jess.
Well, I just couldn't make any questions around those that were not going to be literally impossible. because I've never heard of Loom. Now I've looked it up, and it's very cool. So, and it's by LucasArts, so it's a 1990 adventure game. So it looks very cool. But I couldn't expect you to know that. I mean, so I was like, let's just.
Well, thank you.
It's called Stupid Little Games. I'm gonna make it stupid, make it silly, and that's funner anyway. It's an educational podcast. It's all just about teaching. So yeah, that's thank you so much for coming on. You made it. We made it through the podcast.
We did it.
And I do need to get a little chime when the question is right. I think that would be a nice little addition that I didn't think about before. I don't know why. So where can listeners find you if you would like to be found, Allie?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I guess that's probably the best place to find me. Just Alison Lacy. You will find me there. I don't really do social media other than that.
Lucky.
Yeah, I'm not like, yeah, you mentioned Hamish likes to lurk. I would say I'm similar. I am on Blue Sky, but mostly just lurking. And I follow, apart from game stuff, it's like the guy doing, Derek Guy doing the fashion stuff.
Oh yeah, the menswear guy,
Menswear guy, yeah,
is affectionately known. He's brutal.
Love
he is
it.
so funny, and when people come for him, he's like, do not mess with someone who is really, really good at internet.
Exactly.
Like, and he is very, very good at internet. So yeah,
respect.
So good. Yeah. Follow the menswear guy on Blue Sky. He's on Twitter too, but fuck Twitter.
Twitter.
Is there anything that you would like to promote?
Just as we said before, Southfield. Check it out. Get it on your wish list. Play it when it comes out. And yeah. And also, if you like puzzle games, Radforge released a puzzle game a few years ago called Brightpaw.
Brightpaw.
Yeah, it's on Steam. You play it on PC, and you are a little cat that has to work through little levels.
I'm in already.
Puzzles. It's beautiful. It's a really pretty game.
Brightpaw, like PAW, Brightpaw.
Yeah, yeah.
So Brightpaw and Southfield, rad. So yeah, wishlist Southfield and check out Brightpaw. I'm gonna check out Brightpaw. Anything where you get to like be a cat, makes me really happy. And you can follow me, Jess, I'm on Blue Sky at Cake Tease. It's CakeTease at bsky.social. I'm also on Instagram at cake_tease. And again, as I say all the time, it is not a sexual thing. I used to be a cake decorator. So I'm really only on Blue Sky these days. And I don't post a lot on Instagram, but I like seeing everybody's fun photos. So you can follow me on Instagram. Everything's about my cat on Instagram. I post lots of photos about him, and that's great. So if you want to see some cat photos, follow me on Instagram. So thank you so much for listening to everybody out there to Stupid Little Games. Please follow or subscribe on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. If you liked it, please consider giving us a review. It really helps us out to get on those algorithms for like new and upcoming podcasts. If you do that, I would love you forever. You don't have to, but it would be great. I would appreciate it. This podcast has been hosted and executive produced by me. I'm Jess Pardue. Our theme song and logo are by the multi-talented Bayard Russell. Audio engineering and final editing are by Gabe Koski, a man who provides great moron support. It's like moral support, except he's an idiot. And we will see you next Tuesday. Goodbye.